back to my channel up here today. So in this video, I'm going to show you step by step on how to start a podcast. Now, this video is actually like on the entire YouTube, it's probably the most comprehensive video on how to actually start a podcast. We're going to go ahead and take you by the hand, and I'm going to show you exactly what you need to do to pick a best host, how to, what kind of equipment do you need to buy, or you might not have to buy an equipment. A lot of people are wasting money. Or how to edit, how to get those free softwares, how to plan it, everything from A to Z. We're gonna go ahead and teach that to you. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and collaborate with Podvalley. So Podvalley is a website where you can get all these freebies and resources on everything about podcasting. So I have with me Nikesh. He is the founder of Podvalley, and he's gonna go ahead and take it over from here. And I'll be with you in a bit, but he's gonna go ahead and teach you everything that you need to know in order to start a podcast. So let's go ahead. Let's take it away, Nikesh.
So you want to get started podcasting? Well, in this course, I'm going to teach you everything from what mic, from what laptop, what headphones, all the way to how to start and grow your podcast. My name is Nikesh Chapagan, and for the past 10 years, I've helped hundreds to thousands of people start their podcast. I have started many successful podcasts, and just in the last week, I started a new one that reached 10,000 listeners on the first day. So I'm going to show you how to get started and how to grow. So stay tuned for that.
All right, so now you're ready to get your podcast started. And before you can even get started, you're gonna have to figure out your podcast niche. So what a podcast niche means is it's pretty much like a fancy word for your topic. So you need to figure out what your topic is going to be. Okay, so maybe, you've already kind of figured out what your podcast is going to be about and what you're going to do, talk about in your podcast. But let me tell you something before, you go ahead and, get started and you're ready to go and all that type of stuff. Now, you want to keep one thing in mind. Do you want to do this podcast just for fun? Or do you really want to make money from your podcast? Now, I hope you want to make some money from your podcast. And guys, there's a lot of money to be made. And this is the truth. I've been doing podcasts, like I said, for many, many years now. So, there's a lot of money to be made here. So, I want to kind of go over some of the mistakes that I made when I was choosing my niche, and this might better help you in choosing your topic. So now the first thing, as you can see, my first ever podcast that I ever did, I did it on interesting facts. So this was stuff like, let's say, there was some interesting fact about the monument in Washington, D.C., or, about some country or something like that. And I realized, hey, this is a good topic, but there wasn't a lot of people listening. So I started off with, just a few listeners here and there, and I was able to grow it to a couple thousand listeners per podcast. And after that, it didn't really grow. I was promoting it, I was pushing it just like anything else, but it was not growing. And I realized, hey, there isn't a lot of people that are interested in this topic. Yes, there's 1,000 to 2,000 people, but there isn't, the tens of thousands of people that I was looking to, come back and listen to my podcast every single week. So, after that, I went ahead, tried a few different podcasts, few different ways to promote it and this and that, and it really wasn't working. So after a few podcasts, I decided to do a podcast on sales. So I come from a sales background, have businesses, have companies and stuff like that. So I thought that this would be a really good podcast to do. And it turned out to be really good. So, in the beginning, again, small listens here and there, but as I started promoting it, as I started doing more podcasts, it really started growing, and I was getting those tens to thousands of listeners per podcast, and so it turned out to be really good. And I realized there is a lot of market out there for sales, so that's why it turned out so good, like it did. And now coming up to my last podcast that I currently still run. I do the sales one still, but this one right here, it's about happiness and life advice. Everything that I've gone through, I thought if I shared it, it would turn out to be a really good podcast, because I realized there's a lot of people out there looking for self-help podcasts, stuff like that. So I started this, and this has been the most successful podcast that I've ever done. Just to give you an idea, last week when we launched one of our episodes, in the first day it had over 20,000 listens or downloads. So, you can tell just by that it is going really, really well. And, with the mistakes that I made and the success that I have pretty much accomplished, I would say, I've learned a few things. So your niche is very, very important, okay? When you want to do, let's say, a podcast about how to clean carpets, let's be honest, okay? There's not a lot of people looking for a podcast like that. Might be something someone stumbles on, like, one of these days, but it's not something that someone is going to listen to on a week in, week out basis, or even a daily basis, right? So picking your topic is important, okay? So you might have a topic in mind, and it might be a good topic, but let's see how you can even maybe narrow it down and really get a good niche. So how do you find your niche, right? Your perfect niche. Now, here is an advice. So go to this website. I'm going to go onto it right now. It's called magazines.com. Okay, so this is a website that just allows you to do magazine subscriptions and stuff like that. Now, that's not what we're interested in. What we're interested in is right here. So we're gonna go to all categories. So you can see there's so much magazines out there, right? So that means that people are actually reading this and are interested in it. So let's say your podcast is going to be on comic books. So I'm going to go ahead and click on comic books, and I'm going to go down here, and I see, wow, there's a lot of comic books and, different things about it. So you can tell that, hey, this niche might actually be good. Now, the next thing you want to do is go ahead and kind of narrow it down more. Okay. So I found comic books. Now, let's say I just want to talk about, Spider-Man. Now, if you go look around for podcasts and stuff, you can see there might not be a lot of podcasts about just Spider-Man. So now your podcast is going to stand out. So people that are out there that are listening to, or have these magazines or listening to other things, you can tell that, they're interested in podcasts about Spider-Man. So now you narrowed it down. It's gonna be easier to find your audience. Now, let me give you another example. Let's say that your podcast is about health and fitness. So let me find health and fitness. It's right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on health and fitness. Now, you can see there's men's health, women's health. There's stuff about, food. There's stuff about losing weight. There's Runner's Magazine. There's Yoga Magazine. As you can see, there's stuff about, hiking. There's stuff about biking. There's so many stuff, as you can see. So instead of just having health and fitness as my niche or topic, it could be men's health. It could be health and fitness in the food industry. Okay, it could be about hiking, guys. It could be about yoga. So as you can see from just those two examples, you can find your niche. You can find a topic that you want to talk about. Let's say you want to talk about health, or you want to just talk about fitness. Then you go on magazine.com and you kind of narrow it down. You look around and you see, look, there's a big one right here about, bodybuilding. But there's one here about yoga. And then there's here, it's called backpacking, which is pretty much, talks about hiking and stuff. Now, as you can see, you narrow it down. That way you have more stuff to talk about. Plus, it's really easy to find that audience and that correct audience. So this is how you should find your niche. And as you can tell, it's very important. I made a couple mistakes in the beginning, not finding the perfect niche. But with magazine.com, I think you can really use that to figure out, what you're going to talk about and kind of narrowing it down to the perfect audience. Your podcast cover art is one of the most crucial parts of your podcast. Now, why is it crucial? I'm pretty sure you've heard of the saying that says, don't judge a book by its cover. But it's crazy how we always judge a book by its cover, right? So think about it. If you're walking down, a bookstore, let's say Barnes & Noble's, and you're walking down, you're looking at thousands and thousands of books, right? But the book that catches your attention is one that's, kind of cool looking. The cover is colorful, or it has cool words that kind of pop out to you. And you end up picking up that book, right? And picking up that book doesn't mean you're going to read it completely, but at least you were interested and you will give it a shot, right? You might open up, read the first chapter, might read the back, might read about what it's, about, or something like that. But that cover of that book did cause you to pretty much kind of, pick up that book, right? And get interested in it. So that's the same thing with cover art. So if let's say I'm trying to find a new podcast, the first thing I'm going to go is either I'm going to open up, Apple Podcast or Google Play or even Spotify, and I'm going to, search for podcasts, the topic that I'm looking for. And then I'm going to go ahead and scroll down and I'm going to look at, the whole list. But mostly I'm going to click on something that's interesting, right? That I might look at the cover art and be like, okay, this looks cool. Let me click on it. Let me read about it. Let me play one of the episodes. So it's the same thing as the book example. Okay, I'm gonna go and look through a list, and I'm gonna pick out the one that's probably going to have the cover art that's gonna, interest me. So hopefully that shows you that it's really important to have a good cover art, and it's crucial because that's the first thing someone is going to see when they're looking for a podcast. So now that being said, there are a few rules that you need to kind of follow in order to make sure your cover art is perfect and is that eye-catching. Okay? So number one is it should only be 1/4 text. So don't have a bunch of text on there. You have no idea how many times I see, really, really bad cover art, and it's because it's crowded with text. If I have to sit there and squint my eyes to read what it says, I'm just gonna get tired and move on. Aren't you gonna do the same? So just think about that. So 1/4 text, okay? Let's not have too much text on there. Next thing is originality. The worst thing is looking at a podcast and, thinking that it was copied from another one. Okay, I don't want to go listen to a bootleg podcast that looks like something that's already famous. So, I'm never going to click on it. No one's going to click on it. So don't steal someone else's cover art and just make it yours, right? You can use other people's idea and make it very similar, but don't just, take their cover art and change the title and maybe change one picture. Okay, don't do that. Next thing is color scheme. Now, if your colors are not appealing to me, why would I click on it, right? And, don't overthink this. What this pretty much means is don't have a red background and black text, okay? that is not pleasing to the eye. That's gonna hurt my head and I'm never gonna click on it. So understand color schemes, and guys, a quick Google search will help you with this, okay? So understand what colors look good next to each other and pretty much be your own judge. If you look at the cover art and you're like, wow, this is beautiful, this is nice, then it's gonna work. But if you look at it and you're like, something looks off, then it's probably not going to work. So that's how you can pretty much kind of judge your color scheme. Now the last thing is, any cover art you make or you get made or whatever, make sure it's in a vector format. Now why vector format? Because vector formats, you can, increase the size or make it smaller or do anything, and it's not going to change the pixel. So if it changes the pixel and it looks distorted when you make it bigger, it's not gonna look good. Plus, maybe you want to make, t-shirts, hats, any type of merchandise later in the future. It's good to have a vector format because, again, you can make it big, shrink it, put it on a shirt, do anything like that. So remember, vector formats. So hopefully you got those 4 rules. Again, very simple, very easy to do. Now, let me show you what, a good cover art is. I kind of misspelled this, but what I want to do is pretty much show you a Google search of good cover art, okay? So let's go ahead and look. I went ahead and searched through Google. So these are some famous people, and I'm just gonna go ahead and click on some of these, okay? So here's a couple of good, as you can say, good cover art. And now when I look at it, look, the text is so perfect. It does not take up the whole screen. Really takes up 1/4 or even a little bit of that. It's simple, it's easy, and it's, like right now I can tell you, just looking at this, I'm interested in this food stuff. Looks cool. I'm interested in this one. It says, good job, brain. It's so, like just looking at the podcast, I might not know what it is, but I want to definitely check it out now. So let me show you a few other ones. And, this did not load good. Let me try this one. Okay, as you can see, there's so many out there, and you can use these as an example for yourself. And it goes over everything that I talked about. Okay? One, it's perfect as in the text wise. Look at the colors. None of these colors hurt your eyes, right? You can look at them and they look pretty, they look good, and they look, interesting. So again, you guys can do this. So go ahead, Google, good cover art or podcast cover art, and really you'll see other people's podcasts and you'll kind of understand how to make your own cover art. So now the next thing is making your cover art, right? So if you know like Photoshop, anything like that, you have graphic design background, then go ahead, create the cover art. Now there's a few examples. So the first thing is it needs to be 1400 by 1400. Or it needs to be by 3000 by 3000. Okay, so that's the size you need to make it. And I would say go ahead and make it 3000 by 3000 because you can always shrink it later, right? And again, if you do it in that vector format, doesn't matter how big or small you make it, it's going to fit on, your merchandise and anything like that. Now the next thing is, let's say you're not a graphic designer or you have no idea how to make this cover art look pretty. Well, you have nothing to worry about. Go ahead and go to Fiverr.com. That's Fiverr, so double R's.com. And I went ahead, as you can see up here, I searched podcast cover. And now, as you can see, there's so many people, these are people with graphic design backgrounds that have done other cover arts. And you can see it will cost you a little bit of money, but not crazy amounts. Okay, so this one is $10. I can already tell there's some really good ones in here. This one's $15 and you can see has really good cover art. And you can scroll down, here's one for $5 and this does not look bad. So I would go ahead and get it created by someone. I don't come from graphic background, knowledge or anything like that. I do know a little bit here and there. But if I do it this way, it's super easy, super simple. I don't need anything like Photoshop or anything installed on my computer. They'll do it for me. If I need it to be edited, they will edit it for me. So it makes it super simple and easy. So guys, remember again, there are 4 rules that you want to follow when creating your cover art. If you do it from Fiverr.com, these people will already know this stuff. And then here are the sizes to where you want to make your cover art. Okay, guys, so this is going to be one of the most crucial modules that we are going to cover, because this is very, very important, and this has to do with your podcast hosting. Now, what is podcast hosting, right? So let me give you an example. If you look at some of your favorite podcasters, maybe you're listening to them on iTunes or Google Play or Spotify or iHeartRadio or anywhere like that. Well, with podcasts, you can't just go ahead and upload your episode onto iTunes or just straight upload it to Spotify. So you can't do that with this. What you need is a podcast hosting. So I want you to kind of think about this like this is where you store your podcast. So you'll upload it to your hosting. And then once it's uploaded there, that's where you'll put in, the title, the description, everything for your podcast and individual episodes. And once you do that, you can submit it to iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, iHeartRadio, any of those websites, and it will sit in this hosting platforms, but it'll distribute. So it will send to iTunes, Spotify, and all those places. So that's what podcast hosting is. And you need it because, like I said, you cannot go straight to iTunes or you cannot go straight to Google Play or Spotify and just upload your podcast there. You need to have it on here, which will provide you a special URL, which is called your RSS feed. And then that is what you submit to all those other places. So your podcast is distributed there. So now that you know what it is, I'm pretty sure you can answer this question. Why do you need it? Right? You need it because if you don't have it, how are you going to put your podcast anywhere? Right? So you do need it. Now the next thing is free hosting okay? Now, I've talked about this in the other modules that, nothing really is free. So there are companies out there, like Anchor, SoundCloud and stuff like that. And, you might think, hey, this is free. I'm just starting out. I can move it later, whatever it may be. Now, you're going to run into one problem. Like I said, nothing is free in this world. So the first thing right off the bat is if you read the terms and conditions on these free podcast hosting company, they clearly state that you do not own the content of your podcast. So technically, yes, you do own it, but technically they own it too. So if they want to run ads and make money themselves, they can do that. And there's a bunch of other issues that you get into it. You run out of space, it doesn't load as quick. And, for a lot of companies that offer free podcast hosting, look at what they do on a normal basis, right? How is their company making money? So one of the big companies that a lot of people go to is SoundCloud. So SoundCloud, as you know, if you know what it is, that it's actually a company that, got started for music people. So for people to, post their music and be able to share it on one platform. So podcasting really isn't the main part of their business. That's not how they make money. And if you just do quick Google searches, SoundCloud is actually losing money from their podcast side. So if they're losing money, there's no point for them to make it better or to improve it or to even care about what's going on. So that's why I would say, let's just stay away from free hosting and let's do it correct from the beginning. So there's no mistakes that you will have to fix as you grow. Okay. So that's my little spiel on, free
hosting. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. Now, when you're looking for a podcast host, what should you look at? Okay. So the number one thing is unlimited space and bandwidth. So this just means that, if your podcast is 1 gig big or it's, 2-3 gigs big, I don't want you to run out of space, right? And you shouldn't be able to run out of space. So that's why you should look for, something that's unlimited. And also the bandwidth is unlimited, because that way, when somebody's listening to your podcast, they will get the best quality. Again, if the quality sucks, like I said, no one's going to, listen to it. They're going to tune out and forget about it. Now, the next one is content delivery network. And this what pretty much means is that, let's say you make your podcast here in the US and you get a podcast hosting company, which most of them, they're going to be here in the United States. Now, there might be people, let's say in India or maybe in Europe or in Russia that want to listen to your podcast. Well, if your hosting company does not have a CDN set up, that means that all their servers or where they're hosting your podcast is in the US. So when someone in Russia or India or somewhere across the world tries to listen to your podcast, there's going to be a lag. A lag just means that, the sound quality will not be good, and, it might stop, it might try to load. So, there are companies out there, and we'll talk about it in a second, that do have a CDN. That means, if someone in India is listening to it, they will send it over to a server in India. Again, I don't want to get too technical into it, but pretty much means that it will, load faster and they will have better sound quality to listen to it. Now, the next thing is monetizing and growing tools. If you guys remember in the intro, I talked about how, podcasts, there's a lot of money to be made. And we looked at that during your niche as well. So if a hosting company doesn't, provide some of these tools for you, your pricing can go up very quick. Okay. So podcast hosting, again, it's going to cost you a little bit. But when you start adding stuff like email marketing, capturing leads like we talked about, accepting payments on your website and so on, before you know it, you might be spending $100, $200, $300 a month. And I don't want you to do that, okay? So make sure that when you look at the podcast host that you want to pick out, make sure it has these monetizing and growth tools to help you not just grow your podcast, but also make money from it. Now, the next thing is third-party analytics, okay? So, one of the biggest things when it comes to growing your podcast is you need to know, how are your listeners, reacting to your podcast? Where are they coming from? If you have a lot of listeners coming from, let's say, India, then you don't want to be negative towards what you say about India, because that's going to take away your listeners, right? Now, if you have a lot of people coming from the US and let's say you're in Europe, then you might need to change how you say things. Like in the US, we talk about miles, right? In Europe, it's kilometers. So maybe you have to say it in a different keywords to kind of help your audience understand. So it's very important to see where your listeners are coming from, how they're performing towards your podcast, just so it can help you kind of understand what you need to do. Now, excuse me, but now the next thing is customizing your podcast player. So the cool thing is, when you have a website and stuff, you want to have your podcast on there. You want to make it easy for people to play it and, just listen to it on your website as well. So you want to have a place where you can customize the player that you're going to put on your website, so it matches, again, going back to the last module, matches your color, your brand, and your logos and all that type of stuff. And now the last thing is support and tutorials. Now, if you go to any hosting company and they say they do not provide support and they only have like a few things on tutorials, then that's a company you should stay away from. you want to make sure that, their support is ready, whether it be like an email support, ticket support, or a phone call support, which is the best. But if any of those are available, that means it's really good, because again, you're going to be growing this podcast and you don't want to run into problems. If you do run into problems, you want to make sure you have somebody to reach out to on that company that can help, with anything that's happening. So that's important. Now that you know, hey, I'm going to stay away from free, and these are the things that I need in my podcast host, right? So now, what is the best podcast host that you can get? So here's a list of few, and I will go ahead and go through them. But before I do, I have used all of these companies in the past with all my podcasts, and so I do have firsthand experience using these. So let me start with the very bottom, which is right here. So it's Burberry. And with this company, the problem was that it was kind of old. So when I first got on there, I wasn't a big fan of this. But a lot of people were using it. So I jumped on and I said, hey, let me try it. I was starting out. They had good prices. But, I did run into a lot of problems. After that, I decided to go to Podbean, which was, much better than what I had in the past. And I started getting, more into podcasting and doing more things. And again, Podbean kind of hit a ceiling. But then there was Libsyn. So Libsyn has been around for a really, really long time. And I'm talking about Libsyn right here. And they're a company that, I would say about 70% of the market uses. But the problem with, Libsyn is that they're very, very outdated. And when you go up here and you look at this stuff, the only thing that they, 100% will, check off is the support and tutorials. But they will not check off any of these things. So I'm going to go a little biased, but here, because I use the service on a daily basis, my favorite is Podmeo by far. Okay, so Podmeo checks off all of these things up here that I talked about, and it's, super advanced for its time. So, it has all the monetizing, tools and growth tools to really help you take your podcast to the next level. And it also has, the custom players, the third-party verifications, and everything that you would need. And so that being said, I'm going to go ahead and show you Podmeo, because this is what I use right now on a daily basis. And I highly recommend it, because I'll show you. Let me show it to you, okay? So I'm going to go to Podmeo, podmeo.com. So give it a little second to load. So I'm going to go to Podmeo, and right off the bat, I'm going to show you a few things. Number one, unlimited everything, okay? Remember I talked about how important that was? So it's unlimited, and I can, not worry about how much space I'm going to use. Now, the next thing is that it already has a lead capture ability on there. So all you need to do is, hit a check mark, and then it will help you capture your leads. Next thing is it has autoresponders, which pretty much means I can send out emails and, right from Podmeo. I don't have to have any other software or any other companies or anything like that, okay? And then, it accepts payments, has the CDN that we talked about, has all the social sharing included in there, has your RSS feeds. It's third party, it's backed up by IBM when it comes to its analytics. So you're going to get the best out of your buck. And now the coolest part is, here's some more things that you can look at Podmeo. You can customize the player like I talked about, accept payments, all that type of stuff. But I want to show you something really cool, which you can start a 14-day trial, but it's only $19 per month. Okay, so everything that I talked about, it checks all those check marks, and it only costs me $19 per month. Now, when you go back and you look at some of these check marks like I talked about earlier, this especially this one right here. Let me highlight that. So this one, just the email broadcast, which is the autoresponder, can cost you anywhere from, $20 to $50 to all the way to $100 per month, depending on how much email you're sending. Well, with Podmeo, it's already included and it's unlimited. Next thing is capture email. So if you get like a tool and you add this on your website, it can cost anywhere from, again, $20, $30 to $50 to $60 per month. Podmeo already has it completely free on there. Now, accepting payments and donations, you'd have to set up stuff like with PayPal or your credit card company or something like that. And, the setup fee can range anywhere from $200 to $300. And then you're going to have to pay a monthly fee, including, a percentage of what you're getting paid. With Podmeo, already included, don't even have to install it. All you got to do is click a check mark. So again, I use this service and I'm totally in love with it. So, I'm going to, do my best to help you as well. So that's why I'm telling you about Podmeo. So if you want to do it right from the very beginning, do not get free. Don't get an outdated host, even though maybe it's been around for a long time, that doesn't mean it is the best, right? So I would say stay away from that. Try to get something, that's more in the newer technology that not only helps you host and distribute your podcast, but also helps you monetize and grow it. So, guys, go ahead, check out Podmeo. I think it's the best by far. I know it's the best because I've tried everything else. So go ahead, check that out. And remember that to look over this list if you decide to go with anyone else. Again, it's going to be in your resources, so you can look there for this checklist. Okay guys, so far you guys have seen how to get your podcast started on the online stuff. So, podcast hosting, your website and stuff like that. But like I said, we're in the section now to talk about the meat of your podcast, which is actually recording it. So the first thing you're going to need is equipment, right? So you're going to need certain type of equipment to get started to record. Now, again, I'm not going to ask you to spend thousands of dollars out there, and there's no reason for you to spend thousands of dollars, okay? So the first thing I'm going to show you is something that I use on a daily basis. So if you've heard my podcast or a lot of podcasts out there, this is the microphone they're going to be using. And this is this one, and it's called the Blue Yeti microphone. And this is not going to cost you that much. If you go online, I'm pretty sure you can find it for around like $130, $150. But this microphone is really great because not only does it, catch just sound from me talking to here, but if someone is sitting in front, in the back, or sides, anywhere, it'll catch the sound. It has different knobs and tools for you to actually kind of mess around with to get the perfect sound for you. But the best part about this is you don't need any other equipment after you get this microphone. All you have to do is, let me show you. All you have to do is take this USB right here and plug it into your computer, okay? So that's mic number one, and I highly recommend getting this mic because I think if you get it, you won't have to really upgrade to anything else. Now, if you don't have $150 or $130 or whatever the price of this is right now, some places you can get it for $80, so just keep that in mind. But if you don't have the price for this mic, then what you can get is something like this. Now, again, same thing with that other mic. It is a USB mic. As you can tell right here, it's a USB mic. But this is gonna cost you about $20 on Amazon, okay? So if you go look on Amazon for USB mics, you will see, something like this. It's gonna cost you about $20. It's gonna come just like this. Again, you don't need anything else. Just plug this into your computer and you're ready to go. Now, the next thing I'm gonna show you is my phone. So, people might be like, well, why do you need your phone? Well, if you already have an iPhone or a Samsung, top of the line, you already spent $800, $900 to even some people are spending $1,200 on their phones these days. And So I don't want you to spend any more money, right? You already have spent the money. So the cool thing is, with a lot of phones today, they come in with a built-in recording application that allows you to record and sounds really good. And so those are my 3 mics that I would kind of stick with when you're starting out. Of course, you can get into the professional end with a mixer and all this stuff, but let's not complicate things, guys. At the end of this course, you should be ready to start recording your podcast, right? And I've done a little trick in this course. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've recorded on this mic, and this mic on different modules. So if you can go back and check it out, let me know if you can see that. But I'm gonna go ahead and test these mics as well on this module so you can see. Now the next thing you'll need is a pair of headphones, okay? This is not really recommended, but I would say it is helpful. First couple times when you plug in the headphone and you hit record and you're kind of hearing your own voice, it feels a little weird, I'll admit that. But after a while, I think you'll get really used to it and you'll be able to, just have these on, and it helps you not just hear you, but if you have a co-host, helps you hear them and just kind of makes sounds a little bit clearer for you. Okay, so it really helps with the recording thing. And now the next thing you're gonna need is a laptop, okay? So I have a MacBook here, and I love having a MacBook because it comes with a lot of pre-installed softwares for free. Well, technically it's not free because, it does cost you about $2,000 to get one of these. But if you already have one, then that's even better, right? But if you can't afford a MacBook, then any other computer will work as long as it has a USB for you to plug in, and then as long as it has like a headphone jack if your mic doesn't come with a headphone jack, okay? So as long as it has those 2 things, you will be solid. Okay, so that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and switch over to testing all these 3 mics and even the computer mic, so you can see, where's the difference, which one will work for you, what you think is the best, okay? So let's switch to that now.
Okay, so this is the Blue Yeti mic test. So this is the mic that costs about $130 to $150. There are a few places that you can get it for around $80, but just look online. It's a great microphone, gives you a lot of options, and also helps if you have a co-host. If you have 2 people, you don't need 2 microphones. You can just get this one and it works perfectly fine. So this is the test of how that microphone sounds. 1, 2, 3. Welcome to my podcast. Okay guys, so this is microphone number 2, which is the less expensive microphone, and it's going to cost you about $20, maybe even a little bit cheaper than that, but it's going to be around that $20 to $30 range. And this is any of those microphones around that price range, and you can really find a lot of them on Amazon, so go ahead and take a look there. But here is a test of this microphone. 1, 2, 3. Welcome to my podcast. Now I am recording on my phone. So this is a recording on my phone, which is an iPhone, and I'm recording with the application that comes installed when I buy the phone. And with today's technology, almost all phones have this, and it's a pretty good sound. I'm not gonna lie, it will pick up sound all around you. So it might not, be the best when it comes to a lot of sounds on the outside, like background noise and stuff like that. But if you're in a nice room where it's quiet, there's nothing happening in there other than you talking and maybe your co-host talking, this is a great microphone to have. So here's the test of the pre-installed voice recording app on your phone. 1, 2, 3. Welcome to my podcast. Now, this is the last test that
I'm doing, and this is with the built-in microphone on my computer. Now, everyone's computer is going to have a different type of microphone that is built in, so you need to go ahead and kind of test it out and see if it works. So I'm on a MacBook Pro 2017 version, so it has a really good sound or a microphone already installed in there. And if you have noticed, some of the other modules, I've used all different types of microphones that I showed you in this module. So if you go back and you kind of listen to it, I think you can kind of tell, but here is the test of the internal microphone installed on my computer. Welcome to my podcast, 1, 2, 3. Okay guys, so I hope that microphone test has kind of helped you guys figure out what microphone may work or may not work for you. Now I want to give you a couple tips when it comes to actually recording with any type of microphones, okay? So for me, I am a mouth breather. So that means I breathe in and out from my mouth more than I do from my nose. Some of you may be like that. If that's the case, then you need to remember to kind of, distance yourself a little bit from the mic. If you're this close and you're not talking, what's going to happen is you're going to breathe in and out into the microphone, okay? So that might happen. Another thing is be careful when you pronounce words with P or R. Now there is ways in your recording software or even on your microphone where you can actually help with that, because it's going to sound like it's popping when you pronounce those words. And if you go like people, it might come out like it's popping or something. Or you can use like a wind protector or something like that you see on this microphone. So those are 2 tips. And then the last one would be is to record in an area with no windows. So as you can see, I have windows in the back. This would not be a good area, but I am also 10 feet up in the air. So I'm in a building that's 10 feet tall, and that's where I'm at. So, the background noise is controlled a little bit, but not as much as if it would be if, you were in a complete room without any windows. So remember that will eliminate a lot of the background noise. A second thing is make sure when you're recording that you're not in a room with a lot of echoes, okay? So a way to kind of control the echoes is to have, maybe like a lot of pillows or blankets just laid around in the room, or be in a room with, close walls so it doesn't have a lot of walls. Like a closet. A closet is a great place to record. I'm not saying go record in your closet, but just giving you an example of some of the good places to record. And then the second thing is when you are recording, make sure that you don't have like kids running around or people in the room next to you making more noises or anything like that, because sometimes that can pick up on your microphone. Of course, if you have a $400, $500 mic, a lot of the background noise can be eliminated, but still it's not going to be, okay? So you need to make sure that you follow some of those tips. And hopefully in this module, you learned a lot about what type of microphone you need. Now in the next module, I'm gonna actually show you what softwares that you need on your laptop in order to start recording.
In the last module, we talked about your mics. So pretty much anything on the outside, or anything I would like to say hardware that you need to record your podcast. Now just having a mic isn't simply good enough, right? So you need a recording/editing software. So this is where you are going to actually record your podcast. Now that being said, I don't want you to spend money on this, okay guys? There are 2 great softwares that come for completely free, so no cost. And I know in other modules I said free isn't the way to go, and that is still true. But here, free is actually really, really good. It might be as good as if you had paid for it. But again, we want to go with these 2 softwares because 1, they're very powerful, 2, they're very easy to use. At the end of this course, I want you to get started with your podcast. I don't want you to keep wasting time trying to figure things out and trying to get things ready. I want you to be ready. As soon as you finish the last module, you should be ready to go. So that being said, there's two softwares. One is for Mac users, which is GarageBand. Now this comes already installed on your Mac. So if you have a MacBook or an iMac, or you could just have an iPad or an iPhone, it actually comes on those as well, and it's completely free. The next one is for Windows users. So if you're a Windows user, you can't get GarageBand. So there's another software called Audacity, which works just the same way, but it's completely free for Windows users. Now to install Audacity, all you have to do is go ahead and Google Audacity, and it will be the first link on there. Super easy, super simple, and completely free. So as you can see on my screen, I am on a Mac. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to use GarageBand here first. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up. As you can see, I'm opening it up here. Hopefully it doesn't open up my other projects. That's okay. I'm going to go ahead and click X on this. So when you first open up GarageBand, if you have never opened it up ever before, there's going to be a bunch of stuff just like this. This is what you're going to see, the exact same screen. So all you need to do is go ahead and click on Empty Projects, or you can click on Voice, but I really like to go with Empty Projects for podcast. So go ahead and click Choose. When you click Choose, you will get this screen where it will ask you to go ahead and select what type of track you're going to record. So I'm going to go ahead and select this one right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click Create. Now I do have a microphone plugged in, and that's what I'm talking through. And as you can see down here under Track, it will actually show if you have a microphone plugged in. So whatever microphone you have plugged in, it will actually show the USB. Now, if you recorded it on your phone, like I showed you in the last module, then you will have to import that track onto your computer first. So from your phone, go ahead and import it on your your computer, and then what you can do is, let me go ahead and open a file. So, let me go ahead and open my download here. So as you can see right here, I have this file that I got from my phone. So all I have to do is just click on it and drag it over to here. So just like this. And I can drag it over and, and then I can hit the space bar to go ahead and play it, or the play button up here. So if you recorded something on your phone, you can go ahead and do that. Now there's going to be two things, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this track here. So there's going to be two things at the top, and I'm pretty sure you noticed the tick, tick, tick noise. So what that is up here. So there's a countdown, which says 1, 2, 3. So when you're recording, if you don't want to record right off the bat and you need a countdown, you can get it from here. And then there's also a metronome. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the metronome, leave the 1, 2, 3. And then here, I'm going to go ahead and click on display and change it to time so I can see the timing. Now I'm going to go ahead and click this big red record button. Hello and welcome to my podcast. Today, I'm going to teach you how to record your podcast on a Mac computer for absolutely free. No cost to you. So as you can see, that's it. That's all it takes. Now, if you guys had jingles or anything like that, the same principle applies as I showed you before. You download the MP3 or WAV file just like this, and you just click on it and drag it into here, and then put the jingle in the beginning just like that, and then move the song at the end just like that, wherever you want to get it to start. Now once you are done with recording your podcast and everything is good, then what you need to do is come up here and click share, and then go ahead and click on export song to disk. and then you'll go ahead and I'll show you. You go ahead and export it and then select what you want to call it, where you want to save it, and what format. Guys, I would say recommend sticking to MP3 and WAV format. I'm not going to save this because I'm just doing this for demo purposes. And I'm going to go ahead and quit out of GarageBand. Now, the next thing I talked about Audacity. Now, Audacity is free for Windows users, and if you want to use it on a Mac, you can go ahead and do so as well. And I'm going to go ahead and search it up here. So as you can see, I got it on my Mac as well, and it works on Mac and on PC. Again, this one's even more simple than your GarageBand. So I'm gonna go ahead and select that. Go ahead, click record, say hello, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Go ahead, click stop, rewind it. And it's the same way. You go ahead and you can drag it in from here, just like I did on GarageBand. When you're ready to export it, you can come up here, you can put in tracks. So there's a lot of tools, and like I said, it's super simple to learn, super simple and easy to use, and the best part is that it's free. So guys, go ahead, right now, as soon as you finish watching this module, if you have a Mac, go ahead and open up GarageBand, start messing around with it. If you have Audacity, go ahead and open up Audacity and start messing around with it. If you have to download it, go ahead and download it. I want you to be able to start a podcast when you finish this course. There should be nothing stopping you or holding you back. Remember, these two softwares are completely free and are super powerful but super simple to use.
How long should your podcast be? Now, this is a question I get asked a lot. People always come up to me and they said, hey, I want to start a new podcast. How long should it be? Well, let me show you a few examples. One of the most popular podcasts right now out there is the Joe Rogan Experience. Now, look how long his podcasts are. Some are 40 minutes, some are over 2 hours, some are almost 3 hours, some are an hour and a half. They're all over the place, right? But as you can tell, they're really long. Now, let's look at this podcast, okay? It's called the Fearless Entrepreneurship Podcast. You can see most of these are around that 30-minute, some are under 30-minute, but they're pretty consistent and they're not as long as the other one. Now let me show you this Love and Luck podcast. These are all almost under 10 minutes. There are a few a little bit over, but mostly I can listen to like 2 or 3 of these just in one sitting, okay? So from there, you can kind of tell that podcasts vary from length. Some are short, some are long. And really, your podcast should be as long as it needs to be. So the answer is, it should be as long as it needs to be. I want you to remember this. I'm going to go ahead and bold this and I'm going to make it huge because that's the answer. It should be as long as it needs to be. So if you think your podcast needs to be an hour, then it should be an hour. If you think it needs to be 5 minutes, then it should be 5 minutes. It does not matter as long as your podcast is as long as it needs to be. So remember that. Now, that being said, there is some rules that you would like to follow or kind of, just guidance to look at. So let me show you what that is. So it really depends on how often you post. If you're posting 1 to 2 times a week or 1 to 2 times a month, then it should be 60 minutes or more. As you can see, if we go back to Joe Rogan's, as you can see, he posts kind of every other week, and in the week maybe it's 1, 2, maybe even 3 times. It's different things, so they're long. That's why they're so long, because people only get to listen to him once a week or twice a week or maybe once a month. Now if you do it every day, then you want to do about 5 to 10 minutes. If we go back to the Love and Luck, as you can tell, it's not almost every day, but it's pretty close, as you can tell. It's like almost every other day, if you can look at the dates. Now, that being said, they've done it much shorter. They've done that 10-minute sweet spot because now I have more podcasts of yours to listen to in that week. Now, the perfect length, and this is from experience and kind of experiment, is around that 20 to 25 minutes. Now, let me use the entrepreneurship one as an example. These people, their biggest, their target audience is entrepreneurs, right? Entrepreneurs don't have time, right? These are people that are starting their business. They work 60, 70, 80 hours a week. They really don't have time to sit down and listen to an hour-long podcast, right? So when do they normally listen to podcasts? They listen to it on their drive. And if you think about it, most commutes take about 20 to 25 minutes. Even if it's 10 minutes in the morning and then 10 minutes at night from work, it's still 20 minutes. That way they can finish a podcast within that day. If it's, 60 minutes, 2 hours, an hour and a half, it takes them a few days to finish. But this way they can finish it quick and fast. And if you think about it, most people are working. Most people don't have time to sit down and listen for long periods of time. And a lot of people, and this is backed up by studies, even my own experience, that a lot of people listen to podcasts when they're driving. So normally your commute, if it's to work or if it's to your girlfriend's house or your boyfriend's house or whatever, is typically around 20 minutes. The full, there and back. It could be longer, it could be shorter, but the average is around 20 to 25 minutes. So if you keep the podcast around that time, that's really your sweet spot. So remember, a podcast really should be as long as it needs to be. There's a few rules, like I just showed you, that you should follow. But again, make it as long as it needs to be for you. In this module, I'm going to talk a little bit more than showing you how things work, because we're going to be talking about podcast structure. Now, if you have a piece of paper next to you, get it out because I want you to take some notes, okay? So all podcast, no matter what it is, who made it, how it was made, or whatever, it follows 3 structures, right? And the fourth one being a mix of the other 3. So it follows 3 structures. So go ahead, listen to your favorite podcast, and I promise you it's going to fall under one of these. So the first one is interview structure. Now, this is by far the most popular structure of podcasting that there is out there. So it's you, and let's say you bring on someone to interview. This could be, let's say if you're in the health and fitness world, you bring on someone, like a really famous nutrition person to come on and talk about dieting and this and that, right? So you interview them, you ask them questions, you ask them for their help, their support, all that type of stuff. They're pretty much providing the information and the content for your podcast. You're pretty much just asking questions, right? So, and carrying on the conversation. But this is by far the most popular one. And so there's 2 reasons this is popular. One, you kind of never run out of content, right? Because it's not up to you to come up with content. It's up to you just pretty much find someone that's knowledgeable over a topic. Then once you find that person, you just go ahead and come up with, a list of questions. You can even ask your followers for what you would like to, know from this person. And then you pretty much go on there and you interview them, and they pretty much provide all the knowledge and information and all that type of stuff. Now, number 2, this is one of the easiest podcasts to promote. Now, we'll talk about promoting podcasts in a later module in this course, but when you have an interviewer, you can just let them know, hey, this podcast comes out next week. I'm going to go ahead and send you a link. Could you share it with your followers? Now, if the person you're interviewing is, really big and has a good following, this really helps, grow your podcast much, much quicker, and you'll get new listeners pretty much every single episode. So that's why this is one of the most popular structures. Now, the next one is educational podcast. So what educational podcast is, it's pretty much where you or someone else, two people, you guys come on and you pretty much talk about, you pretty much educate your listeners. So to give you an example, there's a podcast out there called How To. And in that podcast, they just pretty much talk about how to do anything. So how to, make your bed, how to stop coughing, how to stop sneezing, how to ask a girl out. All of these things, you might be talking on experience, you might have scientific background, it doesn't really matter as long as you're teaching your listeners something new and you're helping them some way in their life. So, educational, it's in its name, pretty simple. It is popular. There's a lot of podcasts out there that are designed to teach and help you grow. Like I said, one of the most popular podcasts out there is self-help ones. So these would fall under this structure. Now, the next structure is entertainment. Now, entertainment goes anywhere from, murder mystery podcast to sport podcast to movies podcast, anything like that. So anything that is talking about the entertainment world, it kind of falls under this category. Now, the cool thing about this one, just like the interview, you really don't run out of things to talk about, right? In the entertainment industry, there's always something to talk about. So, if you're a gossip podcast, you can talk about, gossip that's happening around, Hollywood. And if you're in the fashion one, you can talk about new fashion trends or what you saw that you didn't like or this and that. And if you're about sports, there's always sports on TV. So that you have endless content to talk about. Now, the most popular, after interview would be a mixture of all of these. So if you have a favorite podcast, I'm pretty sure it's a mix of interview, educational, and entertainment. And any podcast I've done in the past, I've kind of mixed all of these. So I've never had an interviewer on there 24/7 on every single episode, but I've had a few episodes where a person came on and I interviewed them. Each of my podcasts always taught people something, whether it was an interesting fact or it was about self-help or it was about life or it was about sales. It taught them something. And I always had stories from my past, where I failed, where I succeeded, what I did, which kind of made it entertaining. So, you guys need to figure out what you want to do. Do you want to make it interview? Do you want to make it educational? Or do you want to make it entertainment? Or do you want to mix it all? Now, you might be asking me, hey, is it really that important that I pick one of these right now? It's not. It's not that important. But it is important to have a good structure where you can flow through, your podcast, where all your podcasts sound the same. Because you want to have consistency and you want to have consistency through your brand. So if all your podcasts are different and they don't match and they're all over the place, then people are going to be like, okay, I like these types, but I don't like this type. I might like these episodes and I don't like these episodes. So having a structure is very important. And I'll give you an example of, a structure that you might want to come up with. So let's say the first thing you do is an intro, okay? So you say, hey, welcome to my podcast, back at it again with 123podcast.com. Now, after you do that, maybe you want to do something like, okay, we're going to say the joke of the day, okay? So now you give them a joke, people laugh, you laugh, everything happens. After that, you teach them something. So you teach something, right? You just say, hey, so 2 + 2 = 4. No, it equals 5. In some countries it equals 5, some countries it equals 4, whatever it may be, you teach them something. After that, you do an interview. If I can spell it right. You do an interview with someone. So someone that has knowledge. Since we were talking about 2 plus 2, you bring in a math teacher. And you ask them questions. Hey, how does this work, that work, all that stuff. After that, you thank the interview person. And then you shout them out. So what this means is pretty much you say, oh, thank you, Bob, for coming. So if you guys liked Bob today, then make sure you check out Bob on his Instagram, @BobTheBuilder, or something like that. Then after that, you do a call to action. So this is where you say, hey, if you guys found this podcast interesting, make sure you check out the previous podcast and don't forget to subscribe. Okay, this is where you want to call to action to them. And at the end, you just want to close it out saying, thank you for listening. I'll see you guys on the next episode. So this is something you're going to have to play around with, and this is something that can change, okay? So as over time, if you see, hey, this joke of the day is not working out, I'm going to delete this. Okay, we didn't have an interviewer today, so, we don't need to do an interview or a shout out, so going to change that. So you can go and kind of mix it together, okay? So you can do this, but you just have to kind of play around with it. And like I said, it can change, but shouldn't change, on every other episode, right? It should be consistent for at least, 10, 15, 20 episodes before you decide to change it, and only change it if it's not working. So this gives you a pretty good idea on what structure is, what are the most popular structures, and pretty much how you should structure it out. Remember, guys, I'm going to say it again. It's important to have a podcast structure before you start recording. You know everything now, okay? Now it's time to actually publish your podcast. So the first thing you need to do is, once you get your hosting set up, something like, let me just give you an example because I use Podmeo. So I'll go to podmeo.com or .io, and I will log in, and I will go ahead and upload my podcast. Once I upload the episode on there, I will, write out the title. I'll write out everything for it. Once I do that, then I will go ahead, click publish or click schedule. And yes, with Podmeo, you can schedule out your podcast, which is really helpful. But I'll go ahead and do that. Now, once I go ahead and do that, what the podcast or what Podmeo will do for me, or any of your podcast hosts, they'll create an RSS feed for you, okay? So it's just pretty much a fancy name for a URL, and that URL has code for your podcast. Now, let me show you an example of what it looks like. Now, this might not make sense to you. You don't need to freak out because it doesn't really need to make sense, okay? So I'm going to go to it. So this is my RSS feed right here. So this is my link, and I got this straight from my podcast host, Podmeo, right? And so what this does is they put in, things that other RSS or other places can read. So if you scroll down, you can kind of make sense of it. You can see, the name of the podcast, the link, your website link, your contact info, where the picture of your podcast is, and then you kind of scroll down and you can see everything else, for each of the episodes. So again, it's long, it's code, it might not make sense to you, but places like iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, I got confused, but Google Play, Spotify, all those places, they can read this code, okay? So they can read this. So you need to have this, and your podcast host will provide you an RSS feed. Again, they'll give you this URL. You can go to it. This is what it'll look like, but you need to go ahead and copy that URL. So go ahead and copy it. And then it's super simple after that, guys. So I'm going to show you on Spotify, right? So I'm going to go to SPOTI, Spotify for Podcasters. Okay. So I'm going to show you, and you're just going to click on this, and then you're going to go ahead and click Get Started. And then as you can see, I already have a podcast. If you don't, you just click on submit podcast. You go ahead and click get started. And then you paste your RSS feed here. And then you go through the whole process of actually, getting it up. This is giving me an error because my podcast already exists on Spotify, right? But if yours doesn't, you can go ahead and click next here, and it'll take you through all the steps of actually getting it ready and submitted, okay? So that's Spotify. Now it's the same thing for iTunes. So if you do iTunes for podcasters, it'll pop up with, where you can actually submit it, okay? So you guys go in there, and all you have to do is, again, same thing, post your RSS feed, and then after that, you just hit submit. And now the same thing for anywhere else that you need to submit, all you have to do is submit your RSS feed. Now make sure that you actually submit it on iTunes, okay, Spotify, and Google Play. It's called Google Play Music, but those 3 places, you need to make sure that you submit it into those 3 places for sure. After you do that, you can submit it anywhere else if you would like, but I highly recommend those 3 things because that's where people are listening to podcasts, okay? That's where people are listening to, that's where they're going to find you. So those are your top 3 places, so you want to make sure that you are in those top 3 places, okay? So go ahead and do that. That's how you publish your podcast. And after you set that up one time with Spotify, iTunes, or wherever, that's all you need to do. After that, you can start uploading it to your podcast host, and iTunes will automatically go inside that RSS feed again, and it will read through that RSS feed and find new episodes. So, whenever you click publish on your podcast host, it'll automatically publish on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. Now, when you're first submitting, like I'm showing you right now, how you're first submitting to publish on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play, it does take some time, guys. So, sometimes like I've had podcasts where on Spotify, it was approved within 10 minutes of submitting, right? And, sometimes it took an hour, 2 hours, maybe even more. iTunes, it can take a couple days to maybe even a week. Same thing with Google Play. So all of these are different because a human's actually going to go in there and, listen to your podcast and see if this is okay to have on iTunes. Maybe you wrote something in your description that wasn't correct, and there's no way to know this until you submit it. Once you submit it, they'll give you feedback. If there's no feedback needed, it'll be approved. You'll get an email saying, hey, it's been approved, and you can go on, iTunes or Spotify or Google Play and actually see your podcast live on there. And after that, just make sure that you at least have 1 episode, if I can spell episode right, but it's better to have about 3 to 5. If you have 3 to 5, that gives them even a better idea of what your podcast is about, and might even increase the chances of you getting approved even quicker. So at least have 1. If you don't have 1 episode, you're not going to get approved. Let me let you know that right off the bat. So at least have 3 to 5, but having 1, you at least need 1. But guys, that's it. That's how you publish it, okay? So the first time, you're going to have to go to iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or wherever, and submit your RSS feed. It will get reviewed. It might take a few minutes to even a few days to maybe even a week or more to get approved. But once you're approved and you're on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play, or whatever other application you want to be on, all you have to do is upload to your podcast host like Podmeo, fill out the title and all that stuff, and then it will be distributed to all those areas that you submitted to.
Thank you so much, Nikesh, for that video. I hope I learned a lot, and I hope you learned a lot on how to actually start a podcast. You learned everything from A to Z. With that information, you should be ready to start your own podcast today. So if you have any questions, please comment below, and I'll reach out to you and see what I can do for you. Also, make sure to visit podvalley.com and get all these resources. These are amazing stuff on there, right? And try to get them. You can get them for free. So there's no fee. We're trying to help you. We want you to become the next best podcaster ever. So take it away. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure to subscribe to this channel if you want to succeed as a podcaster, marketer, make money, all the good stuff. Subscribe right now. Thank you so much. Have a blessed day.